Hi, everyone. My name is Iman, and this is PreDental Talk presented by Crack the DAT. This episode is pretty special. I'm joined by a good friend of mine and another PreDental student like me. Her name is Lauren, and we are going to talk about our PreDental experiences. Now, I came from McGill. I was up in Canada doing my PreDental journey there, and she's down in the States at University of Maryland, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna talk about that. So first of all, Lauren, welcome, and why don't you just give a quick introduction to everyone here?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So, as Iman said, my name is Lauren. I'm from Maryland. I'm currently a senior at the University of Maryland and studying family science. And of course, I'm a pre-dental student. And yeah, so we're going to be talking about shadowing and internships today. So I'm really excited.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, well, part of the reason why I'm really excited to have you is because personally for me, I kind of got into dentistry. Like that's something I've always had on my mind going into undergrad, but I really solidified that decision later on. Whereas I believe that you might have had a desire for dentistry a little bit earlier than me. So I definitely would love to, compare our experiences and learn so that people listening to this, whether you start early or late, there's different paths to get there. So could maybe start by talking about how you first became interested in dentistry.
Yeah, so I've always wanted to be a dentist. I loved my pediatric dentist, and I was always definitely aware of how great he was to me. And so that kind of sparked my interest from a younger age. And obviously, we've had like these different kind of polar opposite paths. You kind of found out in the last 2 to 3 years or 4 years that you wanted to go on this path. And for me, it seems like forever, but it's really after shadowing and assisting that I was able to, for both of us, probably solidify that this is what we want to do.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, throughout high school and college, I've just been trying to incorporate as much pre-dental experience things that I can. And I love science and art, of course, as probably we both do. So I can't really think of a better career.
Yeah, yeah, awesome for sure. And so you were saying in high school. So for me, I had this junior job shadow day, and that was my first actual exposure to dentistry. Because I've always been interested in the health profession, that
Yeah.
field. And one thing I did notice about dentistry early on was the dental practices I attended. There were a nice team atmosphere. Like it really seemed like there was some good collaboration, and it just seemed like the kind of environment I drew myself to. So that's why when I was a junior in high school, we had one day off where we could go shadow anywhere, and I picked the local dental clinic in town. And that's
Oh,
actually the interview I did with Dr. Kwan. He wasn't there at that time. I think he was still in dental school, but it was that practice where I got my first exposure. So were you shadowing a lot back then, or were you just getting started in high school?
right. So in high school, as I said, I knew that I wanted to get involved with dentistry, but it was just through a friend that I realized she was doing an internship, that she would leave like 2 periods of the day,
Hmm.
senior year, and then go work at a dental office during high school. And so I kind of just started to get more information about that in high school and pursue that. And so I worked at an oral surgery office then, and I was involved with taking patient history and sterilizing instruments and assisting the surgeon during mostly like wisdom teeth extractions, bone grafts, just stuff like that. And that's really my first experience not being a patient, but
Hmm.
being on the other side of the chair, and I just absolutely loved it. So that kind of kicked off everything, then following with shadowing and assisting.
That's awesome. So being that young, I'm sorry, I might have missed it. Did you say that you were referred by your friend, or did you find that opportunity for yourself?
Yeah, so I just saw that she was doing it through, I think it was a photo. I just saw her in a dental office. I was like, what are you doing here? And
Hmm.
so, because I thought the internships were just for like people who wanted to do teaching, so they would go to another high school or something. So I didn't even know I could go to a dental office until I just kind of asked more. So I actually started probably a month late in during senior year to do the internship than most people would have started. So yeah, it was just through a friend. And so always talk to your friends and see what they're up to, and you can always get more information that way.
That's awesome. It's awesome. So moving on to your undergrad. So we'll talk about perhaps like each individually, but I was just wondering from the top, just kind of list like the different things you got involved in, being assisting, shadowing, or any clubs you joined, just to give people a broad flavor of what you're up to these last couple of years.
Right. So during undergrad, I'm taking the prereqs as we both were, and then freshman year I joined the Predental Society. I think
Hmm.
most universities, at least in the U.S., have that. I'm not sure. McGill has something similar, I'm assuming.
Right.
And then between freshman and sophomore year, that's when I started shadowing, and I was at two general dental offices and an endodontist. And I got probably only 30 or 40 hours doing that. But then I wanted to do more than just shadow and stand there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what pushed me to assist and find a job kind of in that area. And then I basically got a job as an assistant going into junior year. So I worked full time during the summer, during winter break, and then when it was the actual, during the school year, I would work Saturdays. And that's kind of how I balanced my time and spread out, gaining hours and whatnot.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, so definitely we'll touch upon all of those. We'll start off with like maybe the pre-dental societies and clubs. Just in terms of my experience, like you said, I'm from McGill, and there we do have a pre-dental club. When I joined it, it was mostly an avenue to get access to shadowing. So there were a couple of dentists like in downtown Montreal that they would have people, but it was kind of restrictive in terms that they only let people come for a couple hours, and there were only a few dates in offices. So I mean, it's definitely a good place to start, but I found it that it's not really something you can rely on. You kind of have to go find your own opportunities for sure. But it was cool because it exposed me, because my other shadowing experience had been with a general dentist, but this was the first time I was able to go see an orthodontist. And I remember it pretty distinctly because it was downtown, pretty close to campus. And one thing I found interesting was this orthodontist office, they were almost, if not exclusively, using Invisalign treatments. Like I didn't see single traditional braces or anything like that. It was all, they had 3 chairs set up all next to each other in the same room. It was like a super old building. So yeah, that was definitely an interesting experience. I'm kind of wondering, for your pre-dental club, what kind of opportunities were there for you to get involved? Because for me, it was just the shadowing, and then there was also, they had like DAT workshops, but that was almost it, I'm pretty sure.
So um, I actually I didn't mention this earlier, but I went to Penn State for freshman and sophomore year, and then I
Mhm.
transferred to University of Maryland for my last 2 years. And so I
Right.
kind of have experienced two different uh, pre-dental society clubs, and they both were very similar. So I'm assuming most, like, schools that have this kind of pre-dental society in the U.S. is similar. So they were basically just not really links to shadowing. There was never any like, oh, here's a list of dentists that accept our kids to go shadow. It was more just like you said, DAT workshops, being able, like, getting access to talk to pre-health advisors and going over the application or dental schools and hearing from past dental students. So it wasn't really a way to shadow. And so I was kind of, led to just Google search dental offices near me and just call them up. Or,
Mhm.
you can go to your own, dentist, as I think you did a little bit. And that's how I got involved with shadowing, just literally calling up offices. And I think most offices are really welcoming to students, especially if
Mhm.
it's just shadowing for a few days, or maybe you can do something long term. But the clubs weren't really pushing for any sort of shadowing or giving access to dentists or anything.
Right, right. So one thing you mentioned there was the pre-health advisors, which is
Right.
definitely something I'm curious about, because we don't have that at McGill. And so I know that like when you're filling out your application, it says you can either get 4 reference letters or like 1 composite letter. That's from the same people, right? The pre-health advisor.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would love to just hear like your experience with that, and just kind of explain to people perhaps like me who don't really know what that's about, and what the relationship is like.
Yeah, so there's a separate office within advising. Like you have your major advising for your actual major or focus, and then you have the pre-health advising. And so I went to them quite a few times. I try to go, 2 to 3 times a semester to make sure I'm on track. They kind of follow your progress, and you can ask advice on, is my DAT score where it needs to be? Is my GPA good? Am I taking the right prereqs? That's the kind of information they give, which is very helpful. And obviously, they've seen so many students come through. And so they have that experience of saying, well, you're a little bit lower here compared to past students. And in terms of that letter you're talking about, I'm actually in the process of working on that. It's called the committee letter at my
Hmm.
school, and they do a mock interview and then write a letter of recommendation for you. And it's a way to compile all your two science letters and your pre-dental or your letter from a dentist
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So it's just another option. From what I've heard, dental schools like getting those committee letters. So I guess I would recommend it, but obviously if your
Yeah.
school doesn't have it, then it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, yeah, because I know, yeah, at least for me, I didn't have that. So did both of your schools have that?
Yes, so Penn
Yeah.
State and Maryland both had that, yeah.
For me, like my experience in terms of advising, like obviously we didn't have that, but we did have a physiology advisor, and then there was a general science advisor who was kind of the starting point. You talk to them, they direct you to who to talk to. And then, but for dentistry stuff, I really talk to CAPS. I think it's Career and Planning Services, and I think there's different counselors there who specialize in like different sectors or whatever. So yeah, but it's definitely cool that in your experience, there's like a pre-health committee, and hopefully lots of students around can have that kind of resource to help them out with that. So maybe let's move on to shadowing now, because I know you mentioned that. Maybe if you could touch upon your shadowing experience and any advice you would give to people just starting out.
So shadowing is interesting because you want to see as much as possible, but you don't want to get in the way and you have to find that balance. And so I would just say, you know, to get the most out of shadowing, go in with some questions that you want to ask the dentist and ask them after the procedures. Don't, while he's in someone's mouth or she's in someone's mouth, but just be respectful, show up with a positive attitude, and also bring questions for the front desk and the lab techs and the assistants, because they also know, I mean, obviously so much about dentistry. And I think you'll realize how much more there is than just the patient and the dentist sitting in the chair. That's something I learned working as an assistant, how much more goes into this whole office. It's kind of like its own ecosystem. And so you should really just go in with a mindset of just open to learn about everything. And I think that's how you really get the most of it. And call up dentists, and they should be happy to have you. And don't be afraid to be rejected from an office. If you like, I didn't know anyone who's a dentist. I just literally called up offices, and they had me. So I'm really grateful for that.
In terms of you calling up these offices, what would you just tell people about, like how you went about it? Like, would you have a resume available, or would you just list your qualifications over the phone, or were you just calling up and just saying, hey, I'm really interested, do you have a space for me? Can you just get into that a bit?
Yeah, I think so. I think it varied, but sometimes I would just say, "Hey, I'm a college student and I would really love to shadow your office." And, make sure you look at their website so you kind of know what they actually do there. And, if it's an endodontist, I shadowed there when I was up at Penn State, and they didn't ask for any resume, they didn't ask for anything, but definitely have those things ready.
Hmm.
And just make sure you share how you're interested in it and you would love to learn from the specific dentists, and it shouldn't be a problem.
Hey everyone, the podcast will be back in a second, but I just want to share the first sponsor of this episode, which is Dentalgram. So, dentalgrams.com is a website where you can gear up on all sorts of dental swag, whether you want mugs, socks, backpacks, towels, t shirts, you name it, they've got it. Even phone cases as well. I've put my order in for one of those, I'm pretty excited about. So, if you want to get some cool dental swag in time for the holidays, or just in general for a gift to someone you love, or for yourself, treat yourself,
you can head on over to dentalgrams.com, use the code podcast, and you get 10% off your purchase. That's podcast.
I was going to ask you something, and that was going to be, did you bring a notebook with you when you shadowed, or how did you do
Oh,
the questions like that?
so I did not bring a notebook while shadowing. That would be smart. So I definitely would recommend bringing something to write on. And you definitely want to document your hours somewhere. You want to document what you saw, what you learned, who you talked to, not only to, have a reference, but when you are applying, as, Iman has already done, you want to be able to go back and kind of calculate your hours, make sure you have enough. You want to be able to maybe write about your shadowing experience. So to have, that documented, and you want to make sure you do your shadowing throughout a longer period of time than just a few months. I
Hmm.
think that shows dental schools that you're interested in it and you can balance your school and shadowing. So if you can do something on the weekend while in school, I think that's really helpful. And just make sure you're writing everything down. And of course, if you're asking questions to the dentist, to also write those things down, and just be organized with all your shadowing, so that when you do come back to it, you're not, making up numbers, or you have any reason to be questioned for any of that.
Right. Lauren was definitely mentioning in terms of talking to people, not just the dentist, but the other staff too, which I think is really awesome advice because you can learn things from all the people at the office. And my practice was kind of cool because it's in Montreal, it's a bilingual city. And I mean, I spoke to my dentist mostly in English, but the majority of the staff there were French. So it was kind of an interesting opportunity for me to practice my French. I'm not a native Francophone, but I have been taking lessons all these years. So it was kind of exercising that muscle and also exercising the curiosity of dentistry. Like Lauren was saying, it's really good to ask questions, but also don't be like, stay out of the way if there are procedures and things. So sometimes like, and also, some patients don't really want to be observed. So if you can find moments of downtime like that, like I did, it's a good time to maybe pull out a notebook, or, like me, have the iPad there and jot down some notes of like what you saw, what you learned, different conversations. You can pick up things in terms of the procedures that are happening, but also like business things and conversations that happen. You kind of learn what the atmosphere of like the dental practice is like and what the day-to-day operations are, which I think is awesome. So that's a good amount on shadowing. So let's transition to dental assisting, because I know that's something you got a lot of experience in, and that's something really cool that differentiates from me and is definitely a valuable experience. So I was wondering, because I know I met you last summer and you were telling me that you were contacting all these practices and you were on the phone and trying to get something lined up, and you eventually did. So that's a cool story. So I would love if you shared that with the listeners here.
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to do more than just shadowing. I think being that I was able to be so hands-on at my high school internship, it was something I knew I wanted to do more than just kind of stand there and watch and learn more about the procedures. So I probably called around 30 or 35 dental offices, just keep calling, or, email until someone says yes, because someone will. And I would just call and say like, hi, my name's Lauren. I'm a pre-dental student at college, and I was wondering if you had any internship opportunities. And so, yeah, as I said, one said yes, and that's how I kind of got my foot in the door. And after being there for a week, they asked me if I wanted to assist, and so they just taught me on the job how to do that. And um, as the months went on and progressed, I definitely felt more confident working there. And it is a skill that you have to learn. It's a different way to use your hands, even if you're, super good at ceramics, or you knit, or whatever hand skill you do, to actually work in someone's mouth and suction and retract. It's definitely a skill. So it was just really fun to be a part of that and learn on a deeper level, what's actually happening when the dentist is working. And for example, when you're shadowing, you see someone's getting a filling, but when you're assisting, you learn more about all these different materials that are used and the different tooth surfaces. There's different types of fillings, and
Mm.
that's just one procedure. Then you can go crown prep, extraction, so on. So I loved it so much, and I would highly recommend, if you have the time to do that. If you have a free summer, or you want to do something long term, I would definitely suggest trying to get involved with assisting.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, you said you started out with an internship. So was that something that was unpaid or was it paid or how was that set up?
Not the one in high school, right? The one.
The one that you
Yeah.
said you did an internship and then that they invited you to assist?
Yeah, so it wasn't really clear. I guess it was paid because one day I got a check, but I didn't realize it was gonna be paid.
Yeah.
I was just doing it because I wanted to be there, and so
Yeah.
then I got a paycheck. I was like, oh, cool, it's paid. But then the next week, I had been talking with one of my coworkers there, and kind of, just expressing how I wanted to maybe do more things. And then he went to the manager and was like, you should have Lauren on as an assistant. So shout out my friend June. I'm really grateful for you. And so then I just, they offered me an assisting job and just taught me on the spot. And it was so much fun. And I think also, just besides learning about the procedures and all and the dentistry itself, again, you learn about how much of a teamwork effort, as you said earlier, the whole office is. Everything has to be running, well, to maintain the office. The receptionist, the lab techs, everything. So that was really awesome to learn about and be a part of. And I think probably my favorite part was just being able to practice talking to patients,
Hmm.
because talking to someone that you just meet, and trying to make them comfortable, and it's it takes practice. Everything takes practice, of course. And so to be able to build trust with a patient within a few minutes is something really special, because after, my job would be to bring back the patient, prep them for a procedure, and then like 5 minutes later we're like in their mouth, right? So you want to kind of um, build this trust with the patient in a way that is effective and makes them comfortable. And I think working there kind of puts me ahead a little bit, just because I have that experience talking to random people that I've never met before.
Hey everyone, we're going to get back to the podcast in a second, but this is a reminder. As always, by listening to this podcast, you can get 10% off your purchase at crackdat.com if you are studying for the DAT, planning to study for it. And the discount code for this episode is SHADOW. If you use discount code SHADOW at crackdat.com, you can get 10% off your purchase and get that 6-month Crack DAT membership where you got access to practice exams, review videos, notes, PAT generators, you name it, all the tools you need to crack your DAT and end up in the dental school of your dreams. So remember, that's code SHADOW for 10% off.
So how long were you doing the assisting?
So I worked from May 2019 to March 2020.
Hmm.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
COVID kind of messed everything up, but
Yeah.
I definitely, still talk to the office. And one thing that is good about assisting or shadowing with the same dentist long term is that they kind of get to know you better. And in terms of asking for a letter of recommendation, I think you'll probably, I mean, I don't know for sure, but maybe you would get a stronger letter from a dentist that you actually know and have talked to personally. And than someone maybe you're just shadowing for 50 hours.
Hmm.
That's, there's no right way of doing anything. There's no one way is better than the other, but I think that's something to consider in terms of maybe making your application a little stronger, or just having that person to go ask questions to. And I definitely asked the dentist I worked for, a lot of questions about dental school, about even college, kind of just background about her. And I really feel like I benefited a lot from that.
In terms of your experience, so you did it from May to March. So did your hours differ over the summer compared to like when you went to school?
Yes, so my hours did, change up a little bit. I would work full time during the summer and winter break, so probably just under 40 hours a week, sometimes more, sometimes less.
Hmm.
And then during the school year, I just worked 3 to 4 Saturdays a month,
Hmm.
depending on my exam schedule. So they were super nice about that. Um, and it's interesting, when I was kind of working there just on Saturdays during the school year and I wasn't there as much, being able to, like, go from school and then go on the weekends to assist, that was like such an amazing motivation for me, because sometimes, it's Wednesday, you're deep in organic chemistry and you're like, why am I doing this? What does this have to do with anything? But
Yeah.
then, I would go to the office and it's just reassurance like, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing it. I will eventually, be in dental school, be a dentist. And it was just really positive and helped me get through the week and helped me with my time management. And so to go back to hours, I probably have about 480-ish hours working there,
Yeah.
and plus 30 of just regular shadowing. Unfortunately, my high school internship, which is like 300 hours, does not contribute to what
Yeah.
they want on the dental application, but it's still something to write about. So if you are in high school, you can still, get involved with shadowing.
And then the second thing I was going to ask you was, I know you said you stopped in March because of COVID. So has like the office been shut down, or are they just opening up and limiting people there?
Yeah, so the office was shut down for, they just took emergencies, but
Hmm.
then it is open again. They have limited staff, I believe. It was my intention to actually not go back during the summer because that is when I was going to study for my DAT and
Hmm.
take that. So, I did kind of plan to not work this summer anyway,
Okay.
but definitely, I lost a few months in there because of COVID, but it all
Right.
worked out.
All right, yeah, yeah, and that's actually when you're talking about the DAT. That's the next thing I was going to ask about is just, see, you mentioned you're going to do the summer, just like in terms of for people that might be planning to take the test, if they could kind of hear your thought process. Because for me, right, I essentially kind of solidified my dental path in between like junior and senior year, and so senior year was really when I was getting the bulk of my shadowing in. I mean, I had some previous shadowing experiences in the years prior, but the majority of it I would say was in this last year, and then in order to do the DAT, I had not studied for that up until that point. So I took the DAT the summer after my final year in university. And that's something that I would suppose if you know you're certain on dentistry earlier on, probably better to take it earlier on, just so A, you have the opportunity to retake it if you can, and also B, um, you don't have to contend with dental school applications at the same time in the same summer. You can kind of separate the two. And the courses are also much more fresh, like organic chemistry, biology, chem. So yeah, I'd love to hear your experience with how you plan the DAT around your other commitments in dentistry.
Yeah, so you totally just said why I took it during, when I did. I took it the summer after junior year
Hmm.
because the courses were fresh, because if I had to retake, I still have time. Those were my main reasons for doing that. And I didn't want my application to be late. I guess with COVID now, everything's maybe late, but
Yeah, yeah.
that was those were my intentions. And I didn't really have any other commitments, fortunately, during that time, so I could study for 10 weeks straight. And that was my thinking. But definitely, I feel like a lot of people take it after their senior year if they are taking a gap year.
Hmm.
I am taking a gap year, so I guess I could have waited, but
Hmm.
yeah, I think there's no right way. Just figure out what works for you. And um, obviously we're two examples of different ways of doing it, but in the end, hopefully it'll be the same outcome.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I know you just mentioned that you're gonna plan on taking a gap year. So were you gonna continue with your assisting job when things open up, or what were your plans for that?
yeah, so half of my gap year will actually be another semester of school because I
Right.
need that to graduate. Unfortunately, when I was transferring, some credits didn't transfer properly, but yeah, so half of it will be school, and then the other half I would like to go back to assisting, um, not related to dentistry, maybe travel, just
Hmm.
something to experience before going into dental school, because obviously that's going to be 4 years, and pretty time consuming. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely hoping to travel nowadays. Not looking so hot. Maybe it'll turn around
2021,
next year. Yeah,
2021.
hopefully next summer. That's pretty much most of the questions I had for you. Probably just the last thing I was gonna ask and discuss with you is just any general advice for people looking to beef up their pre-dental experience.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing to do is to do research on the schools that you want to apply to. and see what they like, and then cater your application and your experiences to that. I think, does your school that you want to apply to prefer a lot of shadowing hours? Some only want like 50, which is interesting, and some want like 200. So cater the application to the school you want, and try and go above and beyond what they require, their minimum requirements. And some schools like volunteer work, some schools like research. So just know what you're applying. And I definitely, apart from the purpose of beefing up your application, I think shadowing and doing more things actually in the dental office really just they're good things to do for yourself to solidify that this is the path that you want to take. And also it's just a good learning experience. And when you do finally get to dental school, you have these kind of nuggets of knowledge about the instruments, about the procedures. Obviously you know so little compared to everything that you're going to learn, but I think it still kind of can put you ahead in a way, and just give you more confidence as you move forward.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, just to touch on that, I'd definitely say another thing on my end was just try to get in contact early with people that are, if you're interested in dentistry, you could try to like network and see who you know that you can talk to and get advice from. So, like I said, I don't know if I said on this podcast or if I just told you earlier, Dr. Mack is someone I've known for a while because she is good friends with my older brother. So,
Mhm.
that's someone I met at a wedding 5 years ago, and she told me she's a dentist, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome! Can I get your info?" And it was actually pretty funny because I reached out a couple years ago to ask her advice on some things in terms of dentistry, and I messaged her on LinkedIn and I asked for her number, and then I went to text her, and her number was already in my phone because I had saved it a couple years before that. Um, so yeah, just in general, I would say if you know people in your network or extended networks, try to connect with people that can give you advice. It's definitely been a super help to me talking to her, talking to Dr. Kwan, who I also interviewed, and other people that other dentists I've chatted with or gotten to know over my life. It's definitely been helpful to help guide me on this process, and definitely ask questions when you shadow. That's another thing that's big. I mean, I like to take notes. I know you said you didn't, but you definitely were asking questions to a lot of people, which is definitely something that'll help you get a feel for the profession itself. So yeah,
Yeah,
I think
and
that's great. Yeah, go ahead.
oh yeah, just one more. I was just gonna say, if you do have a pre-dental club, you don't just have to rely on the presentations they do. More than likely the seniors in the club are probably applying now, or the juniors. So definitely ask them questions, and um, keep them in contact. When they go to dental school, you can ask them more questions about that specific school they go to, and just never be afraid to reach out to people, because the more information you have, the better off you'll be in the end.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Lauren, I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with me about this different stuff. It's really cool that we've got, one kid up in Canada, one kid down there in Maryland and in Pennsylvania, talking about our different experiences. And hopefully it can be of use to people who are either, just starting out now, or they're still looking for advice on how to shadow or assist or anything like that. Definitely, now's a little tougher because of offices being closed and restricted, but hopefully, if Lauren's story of contacting all these offices and finally getting through and developing a really solid relationship can inspire you to go on that same path and build those connections. Power to you guys, and the best of luck in that. So with that being said, thank you again, Lauren. I really appreciate it.
Of course, thanks for having me.